Today we're going to go over how to read a poem because I know some of you may not have read a poem before ever or not read one since high school or something like that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about concrete specific language, why it's important, and how you can use it. Okay, here are a number of steps in reading a poem. You can take a look at this, read slowly, read multiple times, read out loud at least once, visualize and sense the poem, and then answer the questions: who is the speaker, who is the audience, and what is the change that happens in the poem. To dig a little deeper into these, first read slowly. Poets as a group, and one of their tasks is to cram a lot of meaning into very few words. They have to be very efficient with their language, and this is something that you are going to be asked to do as well. So it's important that you read slowly to try to catch all of the details. Why did they use this word instead of this similar word? Like, what does this particular word actually mean in this context? So it's good to go slowly so you can catch all of those. And it's also important to go slowly when you're reading out loud or when you're listening to someone else read a poem. If it's read slowly, you can hear each word and also hear the sound of that word. Two, it's important to read multiple times because the ending of a poem can shed new light on the beginning. And every time you go through, you can try to understand more about the poem. You know more about what the speaker of the poem, the person who is telling you the poem, you know more about what this moment means to them. So each reading, you're going to learn more. Number three is read out loud. Because sound is such an important part of poetry, poets use patterns of speech. They use rhythms, they use repeated letters or repeated words, they use rhymes, they use repeated phrases sometimes. All of this can add meaning and sense for the reader. It can also be easier if someone else reads to you, if you're not comfortable reading out loud or if it's not something that you're used to. Go ahead and ask a friend to read something to you, ask a family member. For the poems that we read in class, most of them I will be posting a video of me reading the poem out loud. The Komanyaka poem, which is the first one assigned to you, it was just uploaded to Blackboard today. I will post a video of me reading that tomorrow, so I want you to take your time today to read that out loud and see if you can answer the questions for that before I actually post a video explaining it. But yeah, sound is a very important part of poetry, so make sure that you try to read each thing out loud. Number four is visualize the poem. Good poetry appeals to the senses. It helps the reader experience the poem the way the speaker would, the way the person who is experiencing the poem would. So when you're reading slowly, when you're reading out loud or listening to someone else read out loud, put yourself in the poem. Put yourself in that situation as much as you can. Think about what you see, smell, touch, taste, and hear when you're in that situation. A good poet will do a lot of things to try to draw you into the world of that poem. And five, all of these things will help you answer these questions to learn more about the poem. The first question is, who is the speaker? Who is telling you the poem? How many details can we pick out? If there isn't a speaker, if there isn't someone saying, I did this, my brothers and I were in the backyard in the Komanyaka poem. If there isn't that, then there's at least a main character for the poem and someone that you can figure things out about. And the details can be as specific as this is a 39-year-old English teacher, or it can be as general as this is a kid, something like that. But any details that you can pick out are going to help you understand the poem a little more, understand the perspective of the speaker. The second question is, who is the audience? This is, who has the poem been written for? Sometimes there will be a specific you, as in, I read the slide to you, and in that situation you would know, okay, so there's someone listening to someone else read a slide to them. In other cases, it might be to all young people, which is a more general audience. And then sometimes there isn't a specific audience in mind. It's just to everyone who might have experienced this thing before or who might learn from the situation. If there is a specific you, often you learn a lot more about the poem from answering this question. And the third question that you should think about when reading poetry is, what is the change? My poetry instructor called this from where to where, and one of my friends calls it so what. So who is the speaker, who is the audience, and so what? Good poems tend to capture important moments in the speaker's life or in the subject's life. So if you can figure out what that moment is, why the speaker decided to share this moment in a poem, you are going to learn a lot about the poem and you're going to understand it a lot better. So it's good to understand how the speaker changes. What do they realize or notice in this poem? How do they grow? How do they change? So if you can answer one or more of these questions, you can get a really good handle on what's going on in the poem, or at least a better handle. And then number 6, which didn't make the list before, read it again. If you can answer just one of these questions, reading it again is going to open more meaning in the poem for you. And often answering one question and then reading again gives you enough detail that you can answer the next question and then the next. And you don't have to answer the questions in order, speaker, audience, so what. You can also just figure out so what, and then try to figure out more specifics about the speaker. And even if you can't answer any of these questions, that's fine. Read the poem again, and then think about what you like or dislike. Is there a phrase that you like? Is there a rhythm that you like? Is there a sort of halting language that you dislike? Is there a description that isn't quite right? And even if you don't know exactly what the poem is about, if you can answer these questions, what you like or dislike about the poem, you are going to get better as a poet because you will know more about what kind of language you appreciate. Okay, so that's it for reading poetry. If you didn't catch it all, or if something didn't make sense to you, you can go back and rewatch the first part of this video or come to my office hours and talk to me. But for now, though, we are going to be talking about concrete, specific language. Good poetry, as I said before, appeals to the senses. Sight, touch, taste, smell, and sound. And the more senses that you hit, the more senses you appeal to in your poem, the more real your poem will be to the reader. The more they're going to be drawn into that world and experience the thing that the speaker was experiencing. It doesn't have to be something that they've actually experienced in life before. If you do a good job of describing it, they will be able to know what that's like. And while sight is the sense that many poets think of first, and it's the one definitely that I emphasize in a lot of my writing, you shouldn't neglect the others. The more real you make the whole world, the more powerful your poem is going to be. And it's worth noting that the sense of smell is very, very closely tied to memory. So if you describe smells, often you can trigger some kind of memory in your readers. Concrete, specific language moves away from the abstract. So abstract is something like plant. I say the word plant and it means something different to a lot of people. Maybe randomly everyone thinks of grass, but even that is kind of generic. So we can move from plant to tree. Tree is a little bit better, but it's not quite good enough. We have a specific tree of an elm. This is still pretty generic, actually. And then we have more detailed, a thick gray elm with ladder branches. And then we have even more particular, which thick gray elm with ladder branches? The thick gray elm with ladder branches where my mother hung a tire swing back when she still went outside. So now we know not just a little bit about what this elm looks like, but we also know which elm it is. And it's in these details, in these specific, particular facts about this thing, that's where meaning lies. That's where we know what kind of emotions our speaker is going to attach to that thing. So we can add even more detail to this. We could add sound if we wanted. We could add smell. Trees definitely have a scent, but maybe in this situation we wouldn't want our speaker to jam their nose up against the bark and smell it. Or maybe we would, I don't know. But we could definitely include more senses here if we wanted to make it even more real. In abstract generic language, just saying plant tends to be boring. The backyard had plants. That means very little to me. But concrete specific language is going to draw your reader in. The details are interesting. Your first small writing exercise is going to focus on the difference between abstract and concrete. I'm going to ask you to challenge yourself. A lot of these are actually pretty challenging. To take an abstract noun and write a concrete phrase for it. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence, just something short, but move from the abstract to the concrete. Go on Blackboard, go to the small writing exercises portion and take a look, give it a shot, and remember, save this all in one document, and you'll be turning it all in at the end. All right, that's it for today. If you have any questions, come to office hours, send me an email. I'd be happy to talk some more and give you